and welcome to AWHONN Insights, the home for candid nursing conversations. Today, our special guests are Adriauna Davis, founder and executive director of the Harmonie Grace Foundation, and Jenné Johns, president of Once Upon a Preemie. They'll be discussing their powerful journeys through the NICU and what led them to start their organizations. We'll dive into the topic of neonatal equity and discuss practical ways nurses can better support families in the NICU, both at the bedside and beyond. I'm your host, Bria Anopise, and I'm joined by guest co-host Katie Swinier, Senior Manager of Neonatal Programs at AWHONN. Katie, let's find out more from Adriauna and Jenné.
Thank you, Bria. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Jenné and Adriauna for being our guests on the podcast today. We're very excited to talk more. I was thinking we could start today by having each of you tell us about your experience that led you to where you are today. Jenné, why don't you go first?
Thank you so much, Katie, for having me today. It is such a pleasure and an honor. I'm such a huge fan of AWHONN and all of the work that you lead. So on behalf of Once Upon a Preemie, thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity. But yeah, 11 years ago, I can't believe it, 11 years ago, my little guy decided to introduce himself to us in the world 14 weeks early. He weighed less than 2 pounds at birth, and we had a very long, hard, arduous 77-day journey through the neonatal intensive care unit here in the Philadelphia area. And at the time of my son's birth, I was leading health disparities and cultural competency work way before this work was sexy, attractive, funded, focused on, etc. And unfortunately, none of the work that I was leading in my day job was reflected in the care that our family received at the time that my son was in the NICU, and that bothered me. One of the first things that I did coming out of the NICU was to journal. And out of that journaling and processing all of our experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, came the book Once Upon a Preemie. At the time, there was no children's lullaby written uniquely and specifically for families who didn't have full-term babies. And the book Once Upon a Preemie opened up so many wonderful windows and doors of opportunity for me to do parent advocacy around some of the disparities our family faced in the NICU, but more importantly, what we could do as a community and as a society to support families better. And so fast forward to 2020, we put a nonprofit structure around the work that we were doing off the sides of our desk and on a volunteer basis. And now Once Upon a Preemie is a nonprofit organization here doing a podcast with AWHONN.
Thanks, Jenné. That was such a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. Adriauna, would you like to tell us about your journey and your experiences?
Absolutely. And thank you both, Bria and Katie, for having me today to represent the Harmonie Grace Foundation. My journey began when I gave birth to my daughter, Harmonie Grace, at just 23 weeks and 1 day. That day really matters because every day counts. She weighed less than 430 grams, considered as a micro preemie. And the experience changed my life. She was my first daughter. She's my first child. And at first, as a first-time mom, navigating the NICU brought on so many challenges, emotional and physical challenges as well. But I also noticed something deeper when I was in the NICU, that Harmonie Grace was a fighter. I also realized that while we were in a NICU, that some of the families lacked the resources and the support like mine that, hey, this is our first time. We don't know what to do. We didn't even know what questions to ask. So after spending 7 months and 1 week in the NICU with Harmonie Grace, I went home one day and I decided that I wanted to journal, such as Jenné, journal my experience so that I can help another family. And in journaling my experience, I took all of the notes that I have written while in the NICU with Harmonie Grace, took all of those notes and wrote a book, My Journey as a Preemie Mom, that details our story together through the NICU. And at the end of writing that book, the Holy Spirit said, I need you to start an organization to further the mission of what it is you're wanting to do. And that's how the Harmonie Grace Foundation came about, is to support families like mine that does not have the support. And if they have the support, still needs that care, the conversations, just the listening ear. So the Harmonie Grace Foundation came about to support those that's taking that journey through the NICU.
Thanks, Adriana. It's really inspiring to hear how both of you have turned these very unique life experiences that you have into really positive work that you're doing in our community. And it's really great to hear that you have so many similarities where you use journaling to get through these experiences, and that also each of you have written a book about your experience to help other families really get through. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I just wanted to jump in a little bit to each of you. So, Jenné, one of the things that is a big focus at Once Upon a Preemie is advocacy. And every year you host a Black maternal health and neonatal equity conference. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a little more about that. One thing I'd love for you to do for us is define neonatal equity, and explain why it's so important, especially in our current landscape.
Thank you so much for that excellent question. I really had to think about the answer to defining neonatal equity because it's just a part of who we are and what we do. Again, before 2020, my industry hero and mentor in the movement is Dr. Joy Perry, and she pinned the coin birth equity, which is the assurance of all conditions so that we can ensure optimal health for all people, especially those who are marginalized. And so when I think about who we are and what we do, what we advocate for, what we teach and train around, and what we support at the community level is really making sure that the conditions in the NICU are equitable for all families, particularly Black families who experience differences in outcomes, differences in quality scores and measures, differences in patient-provider communication, relationships, and interaction. When I was on my book tour, which feels like a few moons ago at this point, so many of the Black moms that I met who cried when they read the book Once Upon a Preemie shared how they didn't realize how inequitable they were being treated when they were in the NICU. They didn't realize it until their children were much older and almost grown. And that bothered me to my core. And thinking about all the work that the nation has funded and supported and is now still laser focused on improving the birth outcomes for women, we need to ensure that the same policies, the same programs, the same funding resources reach families in that very vulnerable postpartum period in the NICU. So the same energy, the same efforts, the same resources that Mrs. Davis was just talking about can't stop at labor and delivery. They have to continue on in the NICU. And so when I think about defining neonatal equity, it is just that, ensuring that there is equity and equal health outcomes, equal health treatment, equal health resources available to NICU admitted families with preemie babies. Advocacy is a big part of who we are and what we do because we want to make sure that the voices, the lived experiences like Adriana and many of others and I are reflected in all maternal and infant health policy and legislation. But more importantly, that the tools that we need, the resources we need, and the supports that we need are not forgotten about. And so each November during Prematurity Awareness Month, we host an annual conference to bring together clinicians, our neonatal clinicians, our perinatal clinicians, our community health leaders, our parents like Mrs. Davis and I who have lived experience and took action around it, corporations, businesses, insurance companies to come together for one day. Let's just have one day to focus and center on the needs of our unique population so that they're not forgotten about. And if there are solutions that are practice-based, and I'm very big on ensuring that we are lifting up and elevating practice-based solutions, which are solutions that may never make it to a peer-reviewed journal article, but are saving lives, saving preemie babies, and saving moms. And so we lift up solutions that have been created by communities, that have been created by women with lived experiences, created even by clinicians who had a preemie baby who now understand the NICU from a completely different lens, so that if there is a replicable solution, program, or service that we can all benefit from who are trying to drive neonatal equity or even improving birth outcomes, the awareness is there. And so I'm excited that We are now embarking upon our 4th annual conference, the Black Maternal Health and Neonatal Equity Conference. The theme this year is moving forward. We've talked about bridging the gap. We've talked about turning policies into programs and action and all the wonderful things throughout our 5-year journey. But this year, I believe it's very imperative that we talk about how we continue to lock arms and keep this work moving forward, even if we can no longer use the nomenclature or the terminology around equity, racism, and discrimination in this country. The work has to continue and it needs to move forward.
That's great. I completely agree. It's so important to keep talking about it and just keep it on the forefront of everybody's daily activities. Make sure people know. I love the idea of ensuring resources are available. Your advocacy is just so great to see. So thank you for all of that. Other work that's really important, Adriana, your organization offers valuable resources for NICU families. You do care packages, you provide transportation assistance, lodging, memorial support. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you and your organization connect with the families that are in need of these resources and services.
Absolutely. Our mission is to make sure no parent feels unseen or unsupported. And we want to connect directly with the nurses, the social workers, the chaplains, or any of the NICU staff. They can reach out directly to us on behalf of the family. That way, we are not overwhelmed with families reaching out directly to us. We want to make sure that we have a structure in place, and that structure is, in fact, getting many referrals from those families that need help or support. We also connect through hospitals with our partnerships with the Women's Hospitals, Texas Children Hospital in the Woodlands, and the Med Center. So when they reach out to us, they identify the support that the family needs. And then once that information is sent to us, we then have a board meeting to see what funds, what resources are available to provide to those families. We do our best to respond quickly, assessing the family's need and provide customized support, whether it's a ride to and from the NICU, a few nights in the hotel, and something as simple as yet as meaningful as a handwritten note for the care packages that we also deliver. And our goal is to meet families where they are and remind them that they are not alone.
Thanks, Adriana. As I was hearing both of you speak, I was thinking about how families, Jenné, you said families don't know in the moment that potentially some of the care and resources they're receiving are not equitable, or maybe they're not receiving the same care of other families. And I wondered if either of you wanted to comment a little bit more about that.
Sure. I would love Adriana to chime in here as well. I can speak from my personal experience of having a near-death experience for my son in the NICU. And unfortunately, we weren't able to ask the same questions in the same way that the family next to us who had an unfortunate and near tragic situation in the NICU were. We, had moments where the pain was just so tough of watching our little guy not being able to respond to changes with his CPAP or his nasal cannula. And parent tears are real in the NICU. There was no comfort. There was no support. In our NICU, however, in the hospital that we delivered in, it was a part of a larger system. And the larger system had about 4 other NICUs, and all of those other NICUs had parent support groups. Ours did not. That was inequitable at a system and a systematic level. Although we checked the box that we were, a Christian family and we would like to receive services from the chaplain, we received none. And at times, the communication and the relationship between the neonatal nursing staff and myself were just too stressful and too tenuous. And I did not observe those same interactions with other families. Now, I tell people this across the country. I was not the easiest NICU mom to deal with. I was frightened. I was afraid. I was confused. I felt isolated. No one else in my family had a preemie NICU baby at the time that I did. And this was not what I was prepared for or expecting. And so there was just this mommy shield that I showed up to the NICU with that unfortunately was viewed as being aggressive or being angry. And it wasn't the case at all. I was lonely, scared, afraid, and confused, and was trying to use the best tools to advocate for my son that I knew how to at that time. And so when we think about patient-provider relationship and communications, and I'm saying provider globally, does not necessarily mean the physician or the chair of neonatology or neonatologist positions. Anyone who touched the life of my son was a provider in my eyes, and I was a vulnerable family member. One of the things that I'm so excited to see us start to move towards as a nation, that did not exist when I was in the NICU as well, was putting the family at the center of the care. So really trying to drive family-centered care, not making families feel like they're outsiders or they're on the outskirts of having to come into an environment where everyone else can see, touch, and feel and care for your baby, but you're the outsider trying to build that bridge in that relationship. And so there were plenty of times when I asked if I could participate in the rounds in the morning, the clinical rounds with my son, and the answer was no. And so I could go on and on about examples of how the inequity showed up when we were in the NICU, but I'd like to say now that we're on the other side, providing advocacy training and support for families as well, when we communicate with current and near recently graduates of the NICU, the families who were recent graduates of the NICU, their experiences aren't significantly different. So we still have more work to do.
I love that, Jenné. I smile when you say that you were seen as the aggressor, that overprotecting parent. I feel the same way. I would say that we experienced two different NICUs. One is where she was born, where we spent 2 months in the NICU. And at that NICU, the support just wasn't there. No one on her care team looked anything like us. And that was hard within itself, because her father and I, we didn't know what questions to ask. We did not know at the time how to advocate for her because we were so new to this. Again, it was our first time, it's our first child, and we just didn't know which way to turn. And it wasn't until another NICU mom expressed to me, she said, "You don't seem okay." She said that you need to go to a different NICU because this hospital cannot hold Harmonie's birth weight at this hospital. And I didn't understand what she meant at that time. So I looked into it. I continued to talk to her. And I then asked one of the nurses on her care team, "Hey, is it okay if we transfer her to another hospital?" And at that time, they wanted to be the hospital that cared for a baby at 23 weeks that had never been done before. So they were trying to receive their designation as a level 4. And she was in a level 3 at the time. So after getting her transferred, because we were trying to get closer, but we ended up having to go 2 hours away to a different NICU. And once we got to that NICU, I saw maybe two people that looked like us, and I requested that they be a part of our care team. And one was a neonatologist. And she told me, she said, if you had gotten Harmonie Grace here sooner, I'm not making promises, but I'm just letting you know the care would have been different because we have the technology, we have the tools available to care for a baby her size. And at the first hospital, that information wasn't relayed to me. All they cared about was a baby this size that they've never had before. We have it, or we have her. Let's do what we can. But unfortunately, they couldn't do what they could do because she needed additional care. So I guess because of the vulnerable state at that time, it's like, well, they don't know, we can keep her or whatever. But I got Harmonie Grace out of that. We got her to a different hospital. The care that she received at the second hospital was way greater than the one that she received at the level 3 hospital. The team at the other hospital was a little bit more friendlier. It's as if they were more knowledgeable, as you know, as the other team at the other hospital. So when I think about just being there with her and being her advocate, because her father and I were the only voices that she had, I knew that we needed to come to grips on understanding what it was that we were going through. So, yeah, I think as Jenné said, is more work to be done because there is still things that some of the nurses, the neonatologists, the doctors are not understanding that we are humans too. We are owed the respect and the support and the care that everyone else receives. So, yeah. And I mean, as she mentioned, her father was seen more as the aggressor. I was seen more as the one that I had a voice, but because he was the leader, I let him advocate more, and I did speak up. Because we are seen as aggressors, we are seen as angry people, and I didn't want to be seen that way, but I was going to advocate for Harmony Grace, and sure enough, her father definitely advocated for her.
Thank you, both of you, for sharing your stories. I think there's some really powerful themes between both of you. And one of the things that you've both talked about is systemic inequalities. I mean, Jenné, you called it out. And then Adriana, your experience was a perfect example of how, you know, the access to care can vary based on where a baby is being cared for and what NICU they're in. You guys also talked a lot about advocacy and advocating for your baby, and not everyone knows they can do that. And then how sometimes that advocacy can really be perceived as aggression. And really, that's just a family who is in crisis, and is having a trauma response and just trying to cope with their situation. But that can be kind of misinterpreted by the staff. So I think that's a really powerful message for people to hear as well. And then Jenné also called out family-centered care, which I think is something that is another really important thing for people to understand, that family should be the focus and the center of the care for their newborn. So thank you for sharing those stories that really highlight those really important themes for our listeners to be aware of and to really think about incorporating into their practice to provide the best care they can. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, Jenné, Once Upon a Preemie has the Once Upon a Preemie Academy, and I was hoping that you could share a little bit more about the content of that program and who the target audience is for that.
Absolutely. The Once Upon a Preemie at the time was the first and only virtual accredited e-learning training program for both perinatal and neonatal healthcare professionals. And as I've shared earlier, we really don't put a definition, we don't put limits, I should say, on who can enter the Academy for Health and Racial Equity Training Services. We like to invite those healthcare professionals, even clinical and non-clinical, even at the community level, to engage in the academy. So pretty much anyone who touches the life of a Black birthing woman, including and in particular those families who have preemie and NICU admitted babies. The Once Upon a Preemie Academy is made up of 4 courses currently, 4 accredited courses, all about an hour in length, where we unpack neonatal equity, if you will, and how it impacts Black moms and their babies' outcomes. And so the first course is a primer. It's an intro to health and racial equity and how that shows up and what it looks like in the NICU. Our second course looks at quality improvement strategies, so really centering equity to drive quality improvement, respectful care, and family-centered care. Our third course looks at Black moms' mental and emotional health pre, during, and post NICU. It's very important to acknowledge that even with the healthy of us, we are still showing up in the NICU at higher rates than any of our counterparts, and that takes a toll on us. And we really unpack the role of weathering and racism and discrimination over the life course and how that shows up in the NICU, especially and in particular when there's infant loss. And our fourth and final course looks at families as partners in care. I mean, we talked a bit about family-centered care and families really, wanting to do the best advocacy to make sure we all meet the same goal, right? Clinicians take an oath to deliver care, to keep someone alive. And as parents, we're advocating so that we can keep our babies alive to one day be able to take them home. We understand that's not going to be everyone's reality in the NICU, but for areas where, situations are avoidable or preventable, we want to train and equip and empower healthcare professionals to be able to do so by removing the layer of whatever lens they may be viewing or approaching or interacting with families. Our courses are, as I mentioned before, accredited, yes, but they're a beautiful blended mix of healthcare professionals who are leading and driving equity in systems. So a clinician, a social worker, etc., who has the experience driving equity and seeing improvements or results in the clinical setting at the bedside. paired off with parents like myself who have lived experience, who took action around it, who have actionable tools and resources that can be integrated or embedded in hospital and community settings to support preemie and NICU families. The Academy I like to think of as a mirror reflection of the care that families receive, part one, but more importantly, an area where it's a safe space in place for professionals to come individually and collectively to learn and grow with one another, so that if they don't have three things, if they don't have CEO level support to do anything focused on equity, if they don't have $1 million equity budgets, because none of us do anymore, I don't know if we ever did, and if we've never started down an equity journey in the NICU or outside of the NICU, this is a great starting place. And so it's that low-hanging fruit that just requires us to show up and deliver human care, so that we're looking at the faces, the moms and babies, and so that they can be cared for as if they were one of the nurses or doctor's own.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I wanted to kind of wrap up today by giving you each a chance to tell nurses what you want them to know. What advice would you give them as NICU moms, as advocates, as organizational leaders, and as humans? What do you want your nurses in the NICU to know about providing care for Black families?
I would say to lead with empathy and listen deeply. Representation and cultural sensitivity matters more than sometimes we realize. And for Black families, the NICU can come with added layers of mistrust and past medical traumas. I would ask them to try not to assume, to be thoughtful in their questions, to be patient and acknowledge our voices and emotions. I will go back to say that when Jenné was speaking of how we are seen as aggressors or angry people, we're not. We're just passionate and we care deeply about our families. I will also ask that they understand that many of us are balancing so much, including them. They're going through a lot as well, showing up every day to care for our little ones. And we don't want them to bring on the added stress or added thought process that would negatively impact how they care for our child, working with other children. So I would just ask them to say, how can they best support us today? Because that will go a long way in building trust and opening doors for honest conversations. And I think that would genuinely say that I know for me, when I got to the other hospital, I was reserved because I thought that they would be just like the first hospital. But once one of the nurses that did not look like me, I looked her dead in the eyes and I saw the conversation she was trying to have with me. I let that guard down to say, okay, you're caring for my baby. And she talked to me. She stuck with me, even when she wasn't, because the care teams changes a lot during different shifts. And when she was not on the care team that day, she would call and check on me. And I appreciated that. And when you have that level of conversation, then trust begins to come in. Respect begins to come in a little bit more. So that's what I would ask, that they have a little bit patient and be understanding.
I echo everything you just said. And to not repeat what you just said, because I completely agree and concur with everything that you said, I have a few things I'd like to leave nurses with. The first is I'd like to thank all of the nurses, all of the neonatal nurses, all of the perinatal nurses for everything that they do. I could only imagine as a non-clinician how difficult it is to show up with good intention, wanting to do your best, wanting to support families, wanting to keep babies alive, and getting the short end of the stick. So I'd first like to just acknowledge how difficult that this conversation may be for some nurses to receive, because I know more times than not, we're all showing up with the best intentions. However, we can all do better sometimes. And for those opportunities for us to do better, there's training, not just Once Upon a Preemie Academy. That is one tool and resource, but there's nothing wrong with equipping ourselves with understanding a population that may be different than ours, that we may not have had the opportunity or the space and place to get to know, because we just didn't grow up in that environment or with that culture. right? So let's just acknowledge there are some differences that we can all do a better job of understanding one another. The third thing I like to leave nurses with is that we really do want to partner with you. Even if we show up tough as nails, even if we show up as the Wicked Witch of the East and West, like I did, at the end of the day, there were some really sweet spots in our journey with nurses who encouraged us to breastfeed and to read and to interact with our babies in some of the most toughest times that we had in the NICU. So, not every family is not going to show up and want to be your friend, and that's okay. But deep down, I think more times than not, as Preemie and NICU family members, really do want to find some space, safe space, and some trust in you because we are trusting you with our most prized possessions. The last thing I'd like to share that I say all the time is that I believe NICU nurses really have an opportunity to leave families with a bed of roses or a pan of thorns. And unfortunately, we don't need more Black moms showing up in this world with a bed of thorns who have to start organizations to address those thorns. If you can leave families with a bed of roses for one, and for some, we can do it for all.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing that. I think it's very powerful advice, and I think it'll really help a lot of people to examine their own practice. So finally, before we go, I wanted to give you each a chance to tell our listeners how that they can get involved with or support each of your organizations. Adriana, do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. I would say that they can, through donations, volunteering, becoming a sponsor, or simply spreading the awareness, there is room at the table for everyone. They can follow us on social media at the Harmonie Grace Foundation. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, which we are new to TikTok. So they can follow us there. There are so many ways that they can get involved. Every year, we have our annual events, which we just had a phenomenal year. This year, we have a Black Tie Gala. And we also have a 5K Miles for Miracles walk. And it's around Harmonie Grace's birthday weekend. But next year, 2026, it will be June the 6th, 2026. So that's the scheduled date right now. So that's the way that they can get involved. They can email us, get on our emailing list, and see the different email correspondence that we're sending out quarterly. And I would just say, just, reach out to us, look at our website, follow us, and just be in touch. And I will also mention that the Harmonie Grace Foundation will be going with Mama's Voices as a parent partner to represent the Harmonie Grace Foundation in Colorado this November to share our story and to share how how the community can show up for us, as well as how the nurse team staffs can do a better job or improve what they're doing when dealing with families. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, throughout the year, we're always having fundraiser events. And we do other speaking engagements as well. So that's what we have. That's what we do. And that's what we have.
Feel like I need to make my way to Texas. You have so many fun, cool things happening that I feel like I'm missing out sitting here in Philadelphia. But for the listeners, we would love to just stay in touch with you. Please visit our website at onceuponapreemie.org. Join our listserv to keep abreast of upcoming events, whether our annual conference, our policy advocacy work, or even family support efforts. We do have a monthly newsletter. We'd love for you to just hang out with us. If anyone is interested, as I mentioned earlier, we are hosting our 4th annual conference on November 17th in Philadelphia, PA, at the Study from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our registration will open this August, and we hope that we will see some of the AWHONN neonatal nurses in Philadelphia with us for that event. If there are any nurses who support families in the Philadelphia or tri-state area, at the end of each year, we have a holiday donation program where we donate care packages to families who are bedside with their babies over the Christmas holiday. We would love to partner with you to get some of those care packages out to the families you serve. And lastly, we want to hear from you. You do a lot. You know a lot, you support a lot of families. If there are opportunities for you to share some of what you're learning and observing that will help us fill a gap as a Preemie and NICU community, we are open to speaking with you. So please be in touch.
That's great. Thank you again, Jenné. Thank you, Adriana, for joining us on our podcast today. It's been wonderful to hear more about the work that you do and to hear more about your organizations. So with that, I will send it back over to Bria.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Adriana. And thank you, Jenné. I certainly think that this conversation is a gift because you all have shared so much that we can take advantage of. I wanted to pull out a comment that you said, Jenné, which was the work has to continue even when we can't use some of the words and the terminology. And I think this is really important in proving that there's power in the numbers. So you all brought to light that those of us that care about neonatal equity as well as birth equity, we are a deeply connected community because anybody can be affected when their baby, their grandbaby, their neighbor, or their patient needs care in the NICU. So Katie and I really admire how you all can share that you focused on your faith and you dedicated yourselves to detailing your experiences on behalf of your babies. And so this has led to some of your incredible training and advocacy work, as well as a network of partners that wholeheartedly support you, your organizations, and the families that you give back to. Thank you so much for just pulling all of it apart so we can see all of the hard work that you're doing year over year. And then I wanted to make an additional note before we close. I recently learned that starting on January 1st, 2026, the first state that has passed this is Colorado. And so parents in Colorado whose babies need care in the NICU, they can apply for an additional 12 weeks of paid time off. And this is on top of the 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave that they may also qualify for. I noticed when you all were telling us about your babies, you speak in days. And this paid leave is offered in weeks. So 24 weeks of family and medical leave insurance is a very long time. And I just wanted to point that out. Adriana is going to be going to Colorado, and I look forward to staying connected with both of you to support your work. I'm delighted that you've been here today. For anyone who is listening and wants to also stay connected, you can go to awhon.org/podcast. Their training work, their upcoming events, their social media profiles will be hyperlinked. And so you can stay connected with both of our guests. We ask that you all please share the episode with a friend or a colleague. Let them know what you learned, how much you enjoyed listening to us. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple. You can watch again on YouTube. And everyone take care and be well. We'll bring you more in our next upcoming podcast episodes. Everybody stay safe.